Counterattacks are being made in Syria, but what is the strategic importance of that region? Burden Hickok, former U.S. State Department senior banking and financial advisor to the government of Iraq, joining us now on set. Syria produces almost no oil.
Right.
I mean, they got a couple little bits here, but they are very important strategically from a pipeline perspective. Ironically, have we become uneasy allies with Russia for different reasons in the region?
So if we are, to an extent, allied with Russia, it's going to be a very temporary, because we are currently sharing some concerns about ISIS.
They want to kill ISIS because they want to keep Assad in power to make sure that their pipelines get priority. We want to kill ISIS and remove Assad from power. So we actually both do support the destruction of ISIS, but are we aligned?
I would not say we're aligned. And I think it's a mistake to think that we actually could be aligned with Russia. Look, they came in to support Assad. Their first hit was on U.S.-backed rebels, because in the definition of Assad, it's anyone against Assad is a terrorist. So that's everybody. That's AQI, that's ISIS, and that's also the U.S.-backed rebels. Right now, the situation in Syria is kind of scary from the standpoint that you've got an enhanced French presence now in the skies. You've got Russians in the skies. You've got the U.S. in the skies. You've got the Arab nations, many of them are in the skies. The probability for an accident, inadvertent, it's a very dicey situation, and it's just getting worse.
How strategic is Syria from a pipeline, from an oil, from a gas perspective?
Well, in 2011, before we left Iraq government had signed agreements with Syria for 3 pipelines coming out of the north of Iraq through Syria. They were going to be a crude pipeline, a distillate pipeline, and a gas pipeline. Now, obviously, everything fell apart with the Arab Spring and the deterioration of the situation in Syria, and then, of course, the deterioration of the situation in Iraq, because those pipelines were going to go through the Anbar province, which is now under control of ISIS. So, yeah, the preference is to have pipeline operations in Syria, but that's not happening right now.
Is there any reason to believe that ISIS is anything other than a bunch of murderous pirates? Do they have a political goal?
They want to recreate the caliphate. You know, it's interesting. Before we left Iraq, ISI, the Islamic State.
I hate calling them ISIS, by the way, anyway, because it implies that there is a state attached to it as well. I'd rather call them Daesh, which is kind of an insulting term.
Exactly. And before we left, the original part of ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq, we had defeated. Militarily, we had defeated. They were completely degraded, essentially defeated. Yeah, they could carry out spectacular attacks once in a while, but the level of violence had dropped down tremendously because of the success of the United States military in that area. Okay, so now we leave. They were pushed out of Iraq, into Syria, which is in the middle of a civil war at that time. So they got this whole area to regrow. And oh, by the way, Abu Baghdadi was in a prison in Iraq, but he was released as part of our exit out of Iraq.
And he's the de facto sort of leader, the
Exactly
spiritual imam, if you will, of this group.
Exactly right.
So we had him in a prison.
We had him in a prison.
We let him go, and now he's helping to rebuild this.
Yes, and we had the forerunner of ISIS defeated. So they goes to Syria, and because of the chaos and the lack of any kind of control in that area, they were able to rebuild. And this is what we're faced with now.
Yeah. Burden Hickok, thank you very much for your insight. We'll get you back on again soon. Thank you.
Great, wonderful.
All right, Melissa.